Hey everybody, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse.
And you're watching the Patreon bonus story. Okay, this first one, this is a film that came out, and I didn't want anyone to miss it. So I think some people have seen it, but a lot of people haven't. Let's just watch a second of it, and we'll put the link to the whole film below. Let's see what you think.
Yeah, it's a very fun video.
Yeah, I mean we just saw the classroom scene, but wait till you get to Mars and so forth.
Yeah, it goes into all the things that are exciting about Elon Musk, and I mean, it keeps it light and fun, and it's really funny.
It is really funny.
Okay, so one of the problems with testing fully autonomous cars is that we've never done that before.
I'm gonna sip some fake water.
So we've never done fully autonomous driving cars before. Like
right,
as it hasn't
happened in history yet.
Yeah, we haven't done that
we know of.
So it can be a bit challenging to test it because it's like, well, we need to test it, but at the same time, it's untested.
Right. You either need to do what Ford did, which is to build like a whole fake city and test your cars with fake things that pop out, but that's not real.
Then it's not real.
Or you put safety drivers.
Right, but as Uber's shown, that's not necessarily the best idea. So there's a third option.
Oh, what's that?
There's a new UK simulation technology company that is using lifelike scanning of the roads and human input to make a lifelike simulation of driving so that they can test their autonomous driving stuff on that.
And you know what's cool about that? You can test faster than real time. Right. Normally with the car, you have to put it out there in real time and test it, so 24 hours takes 24 hours.
Oh, but this can be all sped up.
Yeah, you can speed it up.
You can overclock your hard drive.
Yeah. And the other thing you do is you can have human interaction, so it doesn't have to just be computers. You can also have someone a human in a simulator doing things that a human might do, like throw a ball into the middle of the road or drive crazy. Mm-hmm. And so you can get human interaction with the computer interaction. No one gets hurt.
Cool. They should do the study in like Massachusetts or New Jersey, somewhere with like really crazy, really bad drivers.
Yeah, and we can say that because we're from Massachusetts. Yeah. Another cool story here that I found out about is that Australia has just 43 days of oil reserves. So if they were ever cut off from their Middle East suppliers, they would run out of power.
In 43 days.
Right. I mean, their cars would have to stop, and most of their machinery would have to stop, and think about that, 43 days.
Right. That's not a lot of backup.
Now, that's just Australia. There's many places in the world that are also dependent on oil and that only have a short amount of supply.
Right.
So this is another key factor why renewable energy is so important. It's something that's usually not talked about because when we talk about price, we just compare barrels of oil with, kilowatt hours for sunshine or something. But there's a price to be had for security for your country. And if you have renewable energy, no one's going to take your wind or your sun away from you.
No, absolutely.
That's yours. Yep. So why aren't we thinking of that more when we factor these things in?
I think we should.
Let's talk about Portugal.
It generated more electricity than it could use last month.
Yeah. Think about that for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Over 100% of its power came from renewable energy. In fact, there were 2 separate 70-hour periods when it relied solely on renewables for electricity.
So, I mean, let's keep in mind it still burns some fossil fuels for its energy,
right?
But it netted a positive number, which means that if it had enough battery storage, and it's probably not that much, it could have gone the whole month without burning a single drop or chunk of fossil fuels.
Yeah,
which is amazing. And it's a whole country, and it could have done that.
That's right. It can be done, people.
It can be done.
Get this, Jesse. Guess how much solar energy was put online last year? How many gigawatts of solar energy, roughly? Give me ballpark.
22?
A little higher.
45?
A little higher.
73 and a half.
About 100 gigawatts of solar was installed last year throughout the entire world.
Nice.
Now get this. Wrap your head around this number.
Okay.
Saudi Arabia just signed an MOU, which is a Memorandum of Understanding. So it's basically a letter that says we intend to do this. It's not binding,
Okay.
but they signed a letter with a company called SoftBank to build 200 gigawatts of solar in Saudi Arabia.
200 megawatts?
No, gigawatts.
And
so
you
that's
like double check to make sure there was an M.
I did.
I mean, a G, not an M.
I did. And so
Okay.
that would be twice what the entire world put online last year. They want to put 200 gigawatts. Why do you think they want to do that?
Because it's the right thing to do.
That's the only reason. No, that's not the only reason. A couple things. One, they got a lot of sun. Mm-hmm. Two, they spend $54 million every hot, sunny day in Saudi Arabia just to run oil to run their grid.
But don't they make oil? I mean, who
They
cares,
do.
right?
They do. But think about this for a second. That $54 million worth of oil, they could either burn it to make their electricity, or they could sell it and keep the $54 million.
Oh, so they're going to sell it.
They want to keep selling the oil, make their own electricity.
If only we could all do that.
Nope, just Saudi Arabia can do that. Sorry.
Saudi Arabia is super rich from selling us all the oil.
Right.
So
if Saudi Arabia wants to do it, it's a good idea.
It makes sense,
because
right?
I mean, we're talking they're going to get under 2 cents a kilowatt hour for solar. Wow, that's cheap.
That is
electricity.
super cheap.
Last thing I want to talk about, Jesse, is this report about the factory injuries at Tesla. I honestly, the reason I've kept this out of the main Tesla Time news this week is I don't exactly know the answers. I've done a lot of research on this, and I don't think there's clear-cut answers here. The report came out blasting Tesla, saying that they are underreporting injuries at the factory. But when you read the fine print of the report, a lot of their data comes from disgruntled, what sounds like employees. They may be telling the truth, or maybe since Tesla factory is not unionized, maybe they want to unionize, and maybe this is some of that effort to scare employees into unionizing so that things will become safer.
Okay.
I don't know the answer, and I want to give you guys who are patron supporters, I want you to see behind the scenes how we kind of think when we're thinking about stories. We don't want to report on a story until we have answers for you.
Right. And if we don't have all the facts, I mean, unless we're going to be like, hey, we're going to speculate right now. I don't want to come out with some numbers. Right.
And the scary thing to me is, Tesla was saving Puerto Rico from power outages. No reporting on that in the mainstream press. Yet this report that comes out blasting Tesla about their underreporting of injuries, everywhere. It's on NPR, it's on CNN. I heard it on all the networks. That sounds a little suspect to me, that a report that normally, why aren't they reporting on what's going on at Ford or Mercedes?
Right. Yep.
This happens at all major factories. There's injuries, there's employees getting injured at all major factories, and yet we don't hear about it. That's the suspect part to me, is this seems very much like a concerted effort to...
It's almost orchestrated in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, a lot of things like with Tesla seem that way. It's like, okay, well, why are you picking apart this if you're going to completely ignore other aspects of the company? And they've done that with basically everything. There was that one video where a guy talked about how Tesla doesn't buy advertisements. And so therefore, the mainstream media has a vested interest to see Tesla go away because they don't buy advertisements, so they don't make any money. Whereas, Ford and GM and all the car companies advertise, and they pay for every mainstream media source of advertising. And I think that is a really compelling argument of why that could be. But there are so many more reasons why they won't do that. For instance, Elon is thinking of doing Starlink, right? Internet for the whole world. It sounds very humanitarian, and it very much is. Everyone will have access to internet, even if you're not in an area that has it.
Right.
So, I mean, we're talking about markets that are completely untapped. We're talking about like Africa, like all of it, the entire continent. We're talking about rural places in the United States that don't have much internet, like it's really slow or it's spotty, and they don't want to spend a lot of money bringing physical infrastructure to that location. But of course, if you have it in a constellation around the planet, it just is everywhere. And this is an issue because mainstream media is normally owned by internet service providers and you know, data providers, Comcast and the Time Warners and the Verizons of the world. And they are all basically going to be put to some competition that they really don't have anything to combat with. And so, you know, just attacking Elon himself is a viable strategy to make sure that that never happens. If they can, you know, discredit Tesla enough to the point where, you know, there is enough short sellers or there's enough public, you know, misinformation and whatever to, you know, defund the company and it goes bankrupt, Elon looks bad, then SpaceX looks bad, and you know, things can progress further from there.
I know it sounds a little far-fetched, but it's not at all, because all you need to do is get enough of the public sentiment in your favor, and you can make a company have a hard time refinancing when they need to. And Tesla's one of those companies that is going to have to come back to investors from time to time. And if you've made it seem like it's a crazy idea to fund it, you'll have a harder time funding it. So yeah, this could definitely be something that's going on at board meetings. Like, how can we discredit Tesla?
Another thing is, though, I would really just love to hear your comments, because you guys are our wonderful Patreon patrons, and I want to thank you, and I really want to hear from you guys.
Yeah, no, I mean, when we get comments in our regular videos, it's great, but a lot of them tend to be, how should I put this?
Uneducated?
Yeah, and just not thought out. It's okay not to know something, but you don't generally write something unless you think you know something. You guys, our patron supporters, you have very thoughtful comments,
and you were, I mean,
and
honestly,
insightful.
We know, like, I feel like we're starting to get to know a lot of you, and it's really, really, really nice. And
it's a community.
We're building a community together, and you guys are probably the most important people in it. I mean, we're here and we're able to, you know, to talk to everybody, and we set up a bunch of cameras, and we went to this new room, which now when the sun sets, there's shadows and all sorts of weird light splotches, and we're going to need to get curtains for and whatever. But like, you're here and able to support us to do.
Well, and do you even notice
these crazy things?
There's a tone, at least in my voice. I don't know if you picked it up in both of us, that when we get to Tesla Time News Patreon bonus story,
bit of relief.
We like talking to you guys and sharing things with you guys, because these are stories that we don't think would
fare well on the main branch of Tesla Time News, because there needs to be a little bit more thought put into them, or they're just something that is pretty enjoyable and isn't really as serious, like the Elon animation story. And yeah, it's nice to be able to sort of, like, I don't know how many of you have presented something in front of a large group of people, but it's like really tough, and then you're done, and then you go into a smaller room with all of your friends, and you get to sort of talk about how it really went. And this is a lot in the way that it really feels like. And so we just want to thank you for being those group of friends that we get to talk to at the end of our presentation. But thank you again so much, so deeply, for supporting our show, because is the mainstream media gonna support us? Are they really?
And speaking of supporting us, you guys, a lot of you shouted out that you liked the Now You Know coasters that we had in Denmark. And so we are going to be working on those as a Patreon perk. So thank you for letting us know how much you like those.
All right. So thank you so much for supporting us again for the 14th time. But we just couldn't thank you enough. We're going to head back over to Tesla Time News. We're going to go thank some of you, and we'll see you next week.
All right. See ya.